All right, so true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
That's what we're diving into today. And it is, I think we can both agree, a massive genre these days.
Well, yeah.
But I think, like sometimes you kind of want to branch out a little bit from
Sure.
the big names that everyone knows. You want something new, something a little different.
Yeah.
So that's what this deep dive is going to be about. We're looking at what Refinery29 calls Black True Crime Podcasts.
Black True Crime Podcasts, yes.
And I really like how they frame this.
Yeah.
It's not about putting true crime into different little boxes and separating everything out.
Exactly.
But more about highlighting some creators and stories that you might not know about.
Absolutely.
If you're just sticking to the,
the mainstream?
Yeah, the mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, when you find those cool indie bands that nobody's heard of.
Right, exactly.
And you're like, oh, this is my new favorite thing.
That's a great analogy.
So
yeah, and Refinery29, just so people know.
Yeah.
They're known for their lifestyle and culture content.
Right.
So it's not like just some random website.
Yeah.
They kind of know what they're talking about when it comes to...
They have their finger on the pulse.
They do.
Of what's cool and interesting.
Absolutely.
So what kind of gems did they find for us?
Well, one that really stood out to me was Black Girl Gone.
Black Girl Gone.
So this one, instead of covering just like all sorts of true crime, they focus specifically on cases of missing or murdered Black women.
So that's a really specific focus.
It is. And it's important, within true crime. Why is that so important? It's crucial because those cases, sadly, don't always get the same level of attention or resources.
You mean like
as cases involving
media attention?
Yeah, media attention, resources from law enforcement, things like that.
And is that because of, is it a racial thing or is it a...
Well, that's what this podcast, I think, wants us to kind of think about, right?
Okay,
it's
interesting.
Bringing these stories to the forefront.
Yeah.
And making us ask, like, why is that? I hadn't
really thought about it like that before.
Yeah, and it's not just about, like, here are the facts of the case.
Yeah.
The host, Donnie, she really tries to dig into, like, the social and historical context around these cases. She looks at things like, racial bias, economic disparities, how cultural perceptions might
so it's almost like
play a role in how these cases are even handled.
Like it's almost like true crime meets like social commentary or something.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It makes you think about, the bigger picture. Like, what are the implications of these cases? And, how do they reflect on society?
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else is on Refinery29's list here?
If Black Girl Gone is about, like, bringing these stories to light, Affirmative Murder is about doing it in a totally different way.
Okay, now...
with a different vibe.
Vibe is not usually the first word I associate with true crime.
But that's what makes this podcast so interesting.
Okay.
So the hosts, Alvin and Fran, describe themselves as two Black guys talking true crime.
Okay.
And they inject a lot of humor
and
their own personal dynamic into it.
Humor and true crime.
Yeah.
That seems like a hard line to...
balance. It is.
Okay.
But, what I appreciate about Affirmative Murder is they never make light of, like, the victims or the crimes themselves.
Of course.
The humor comes from, like, their banter.
Right.
Their personal anecdotes.
Right.
The way they relate to each other.
Oh.
And kind of their way of relating to the cases as well.
So they're not making jokes about,
No.
murder, but they're
bringing their own personalities and their own, like, sense of humor to the conversation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's more like...
And I think that makes it more accessible and engaging.
Right. Like
for some listeners.
You're part of the conversation as opposed to just listening to
a lecture.
Yeah.
And like Black Girl Gone, they often focus on cases that maybe haven't gotten like a lot of attention.
I'm sensing a theme here of bringing,
diversifying the narratives.
Yeah, and the stories we're hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what else is on the list?
There's one called Hood Rat to Head Rep, a true crime podcast.
Okay, that title.
It grabs you, right?
Yeah, it definitely grabs your attention. What's that one about?
So the host, who goes by him as Hood Rat, she brings a really personal and raw perspective to true crime.
Okay.
She's not afraid to talk about her own experiences with the criminal justice system.
So it's not just like...
And she really wants to...
a detached analysis.
Yeah, she wants to advocate for victims and their families.
Wow.
And that makes the podcast feel...
So it's very much infused with her.
Very authentic and relatable.
Right. And experience.
It is.
Wow.
And she often focuses on stories that have been like maybe sensationalized or even misrepresented in the media.
So it's kind of like challenging the narratives that we might already have in our heads about these.
Yeah, exactly. She's asking us to like look with fresh eyes.
Yeah, it's great.
And think critically about like, how are these stories being told? Who's doing the telling?
Right.
And whose voices are missing?
This is great.
Yeah.
We've already got 3 totally different approaches to true crime.
I know.
Like Black Girl Gone, it's very...
social context.
Yes. And Affirmative Murder is...
humor and personality.
Yeah. And Hood Rat to Head Wrapped is like...
raw and personal.
Yeah. Wow.
It's really fascinating.
This is really cool. I like this.
Yeah.
It's changing how I think about this whole genre already.
I know, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, correct.
Refinery29 has a whole list of these gems.
Yeah. All right, what else have they got for us?
Let's keep going.
Let's do it.
Yeah. It's interesting, with all these podcasts, they're all kind of like pushing back against that like stereotypical true crime narrative.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Like, the classic true crime story, it often focuses on a certain kind of victim.
Like almost like the image of the innocent, like often white female victim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look, those stories are important, no question.
Right.
But they don't reflect the full reality of crime.
Right.
Especially when it comes to who's most affected by it.
And it can reinforce, without even meaning to,
right,
some harmful stereotypes, I would think.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where these podcasts come in, right?
Okay.
They're broadening our understanding.
Yeah.
They're showing us like a more complete picture.
It's like they're adding...
of how crime impacts.
Right.
Especially communities of color.
Yeah, it's like they're adding the missing pieces to the puzzle, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not just about the victims either.
Right.
They're making us rethink how we view the perpetrators too.
Okay. How so?
Well, the mainstream media often portrays criminals in a very one-dimensional way.
Right.
They become
almost
like these caricatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of evil, like.
Right. And it makes it easy to...
they're stripped of their humanity.
It makes it easier to just process it, I think, when you just look at it as us versus them.
Right. And these podcasts are pushing us to look deeper.
Okay.
To consider, the complex factors that lead someone to commit a crime.
So it's about understanding the perpetrator as person. Yeah. Right? Not just as this like monster.
Yeah, and looking at their motivations, their
backgrounds, the circumstances they were dealing with.
Right. And
not to excuse their actions.
Of course.
But to just, acknowledge that there's more to the story than just good guy versus bad guy.
Right. It's a challenging perspective, but
it is
an important one, right? Because the world is rarely black and white.
Yeah, and by embracing that complexity, I think we can start to have more productive conversations about
like moving from
crime and justice. Yeah, it's like moving from judgment to understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a theme here. It's not just about the thrill of the case, but it's about this
the wider
context,
the social and
human elements.
Human elements, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what makes these podcasts so much more than just entertainment,
right? Okay, what else has Refinery29 got for us?
Okay, so if you are fascinated by unsolved mysteries, those cases that have just haunted communities for years, you have to check out Missing and Murdered.
Missing and Murdered.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's hosted by an investigative journalist named Connie Walker.
Okay.
And it focuses on cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada.
That's a heavy topic. And it's unfortunately very real and urgent.
Real and urgent, yeah.
Yeah.
And Missing and Murdered really shines a light on these cases that often get overlooked by the mainstream media.
It seems to be a theme with a lot of these podcasts.
Connie Walker doesn't just report on the facts.
Yeah.
She brings a real sense of empathy and dedication to uncovering the truth and fighting for justice.
It almost sounds less like a...
For these victims.
Yeah.
And their families.
It almost sounds less like a true crime podcast and more like advocacy journalism.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a call to action.
Wow.
Raising awareness and demanding change.
Okay.
And then switching gears entirely, we have Forensic Files too.
Wait, Forensic Files too?
Yeah.
Didn't Forensic Files have a pretty good run?
It did?
On TV? Like, I feel like I remember that show.
Yeah, like 14 seasons or something.
Yeah.
Super popular.
Okay.
Explored how forensic science is used to solve crimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, Forensic Files II is taking up the mantle.
I love when they bring back a classic.
I know, right?
And give it like a modern update.
A modern update, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're driving into new cases and highlighting the latest advancements.
So what kind of cases are we talking about?
In forensic technology.
With this new one?
It's really a wide range, like murders, disappearances, arson, even fraud.
Wow.
Each episode focuses on a specific case.
Okay.
Walks you through the evidence.
So it's like a...
How the forensic analysis was done.
Yeah.
All those twists and turns.
That eventually lead to solving the crime.
I love it.
Right.
What's cool, too, is seeing...
And it's cool to see how far forensic science has come. You know, they're using DNA analysis, digital forensics.
Right, all that stuff that wasn't...
Stuff that wasn't even possible.
Yeah.
Back when the original Files was airing.
Right, like that makes you think about all the cold cases that could be solved now.
Exactly.
With these new technologies. It's fascinating and hopeful at the same time.
Forensic Files 2 going on the list.
Good choice.
Man, and you know what? It's cool like how much variety there is even in like just these few that we've talked about from Refinery29. You've got like, you know, investigative podcasts, conversational shows, historical deep dives. It's not just one type of...
And even like ones that blend true crime with like the paranormal.
Right.
It's really cool.
It's really neat, and it speaks to the like the talent and the creativity within the Black podcasting community. They're not just rehashing the same old formulas. They're bringing
new ideas.
And new
fresh perspectives.
Yeah. So it's like they're breaking the mold of what a true crime podcast can be.
Yeah, and that variety is important.
Right.
Because the more we branch out, the more we expose ourselves to new ways of thinking and seeing the world.
Okay, what other Black true crime podcasts are on this list for us to discover?
Well, for a podcast that explicitly tackles the intersection of true crime and social justice, you've got to check out.
Right.
Truth Be Told.
Truth Be Told.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Powerful title.
Powerful. What's the focus here?
So the host, Tony Harris, is a journalist.
Okay.
And he uses this podcast to delve into cases that really highlight issues of race, inequality, and their impact on the criminal justice system.
So they're really using true crime as a lens to examine these larger, like, systemic problems.
They are.
Okay.
Tony Harris brings his journalistic background,
yeah,
but also a clear passion for social justice.
So it sounds like a podcast that's both informative and...
to these stories.
Provoking.
It is.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea of the depth, they go to...
one episode focuses entirely on the case of Emmett Till.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a case that I think, you know...
it's incredibly powerful.
Is incredibly powerful.
And heartbreaking.
Yeah. I mean, even all these years later...
yeah.
It's just a stark reminder, I think, of...
it is.
The racial terror that, you know, Black people have faced in this country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Truth Be Told doesn't shy away from that history.
Right.
Tony Harris explores the case itself.
Okay.
The trial. The lasting legacy of Emmett Till's murder. He interviews historians, activists.
Wow.
Even members of Emmett Till's family.
It's like they're saying, this isn't just a case from the past.
Exactly.
This is a conversation that we need to be having today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it shows how true crime, when done right, can be a powerful tool for social change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Truth Be Told, going on the list.
Good choice.
Okay, what else have we got? This deep dive is just
great.
Getting better and better.
Get ready to step back in time with Uncivil.
Uncivil. Okay, that's a title that...
it piques your interest, right?
Yeah, that piques my interest.
So this is a podcast that revisits the American Civil War.
Okay.
But not in the way you typically see.
Okay.
So instead of focusing on battles and generals...
right.
they dig into the hidden stories.
Ooh, I love that.
The ones that have been...
I love when they unearth these...
buried or forgotten over time.
Little gems of history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What kind of stories?
So they use everything. Like,
are they telling?
Historical documents, letters.
Okay.
Diaries, interviews.
Right.
Really bring these stories to life.
Yeah.
And one that really stood out to me was the story of Rose Herrera.
Okay. Who's Rose Herrera?
She was a formerly enslaved woman.
Okay.
Who became a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War.
A female spy during the Civil War? That's incredible.
Right?
I've never heard of her.
It's amazing how these stories get lost to time. Right. But Uncivil does a fantastic job piecing together her life, revealing her bravery, her intelligence.
It's both inspiring.
Her dedication to freedom.
Yeah.
It's inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time.
And heartbreaking at the same time. It's like they're saying, hey, history is more than just these like dates and names.
Yeah.
You know, it's about real people.
Real people.
Yeah.
Who did these
incredible things.
Extraordinary things.
Right. Incredible things. Right. Uncivil going on my list.
Awesome.
Man, this deep dive has been...
I know. It's been a whirlwind.
A whirlwind of
discoveries.
I love it.
And speaking of discovering the hidden depths of people and stories, we have Criminal.
Okay, Criminal. That sounds simple, but I'm guessing there's more to it than...
There is. Criminal is a long-running podcast known for, like, really in-depth storytelling. So they explore, like, the human side.
Right, so not just about...
of crime.
Yeah.
Each episode focusing on a different case.
Yeah.
Or maybe even just, like, a different element.
The crime itself, but understanding, like, the why behind it.
Of the criminal justice system.
The psychology, the human drama.
And the host, Phoebe Judge, has this, like, incredible voice.
Okay.
Very calm, compassionate.
All right.
But she's not afraid to ask.
I can already tell I'm going to be hooked on this.
The tough questions.
What kind of cases are we talking about here?
So one that really stuck with me was the case of John List.
Who's John List?
This is a man who murdered his entire family in 1971.
Wow.
And then vanished for 18 years.
That's chilling.
It is.
What made that case so compelling for them?
So it's not just the brutality of it.
Yeah.
But, like, the psychology of this man.
Yeah.
Like, what would drive someone to do something like that?
Right.
So they go deep into List's background. You know, his financial troubles.
Wow.
Even his religious beliefs.
Wow.
To try and understand, like, how his thinking...
It's like a puzzle, but a human puzzle.
Got so distorted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that, like, I don't know, stay with you.
They do.
You know, even after you're done, like, listening to it, they just kind of stay with you.
They do.
Criminal. On the list, no question.
Good choice.
Okay, what else we got? Refinery29's killing it.
All right, if you're in the mood for something a bit lighter,
but
still incredibly insightful.
Okay.
There's Wine and Crime.
Wine and Crime.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like
fun, right?
good night.
Yeah.
What's this one about?
So it's hosted by three friends who, as you might guess, love true crime and wine.
Okay, so they're adding a little fun to the true crime
flavor
discussion.
Yeah, but don't let the wine fool you.
Oh,
they take the cases seriously.
So it's a good balance of...
They're smart, empathetic, and not afraid to dive into tough conversations about...
information and...
You know, the bigger issues surrounding crime.
Entertainment.
Yeah. And to give you an example, they did a fascinating episode on the case of Mary Rogers.
Who's Mary Rogers?
So she was a young woman found murdered in New York City.
Okay.
Back in 1841.
1841, wow.
Real historical mystery.
Going way back.
They are.
In time.
Yeah, and what I love about their approach is they don't just present, like, the facts of the case.
Right.
They really delve into, like, the social context.
So to understand
of that time period, like how gender roles.
Crime, you gotta understand the world in which it...
And societal expectations might have played a role in the case.
Happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
And they managed to do it all while...
Wine and crime, that's going on the list.
Keeping things fun and engaging.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's like, you know, all these podcasts, they offer a different, like...
A different lens.
Yeah, a different lens through which to view true crime. You know, it's not just one big category.
It's a whole spectrum.
It's a spectrum.
Of approaches and perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes it so great.
Right.
And it speaks to the talent and creativity within the Black podcasting community.
Yeah.
They're not just,
right.
rehashing the same old formulas.
Right.
They're bringing fresh ideas.
Okay, what other Black true crime podcasts are on this list?
Fresh perspectives to the genre.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who maybe want to dive into like the really dark side of human nature, there's serial killers.
Okay. I mean, that one's pretty self-explanatory.
It is.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than
there is.
Just, listing off a bunch of serial killers.
Yeah, they're trying to get inside the minds of some of history's most notorious murderers.
Right.
To understand their backgrounds.
Not for the faint of heart, then.
Their motivations.
Yeah.
And the horrific crimes they committed.
But for those who are into that, like dark psychology, I can see the appeal.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the host, Vanessa Richardson, does an incredible job. Yeah. She presents these cases.
What kind of cases are we talking about?
In a way that's both informative and chilling.
Give me an example.
So they did an episode on Ted Bundy.
Ooh, Ted Bundy. Just
one of the most...
Name sends chills down my spine.
Infamous serial killers of all time.
Yeah.
So what was their approach with him?
Vanessa Richardson really goes in depth.
Okay.
Not just the crimes themselves.
Right.
But like Bundy's whole life, his trial.
Okay.
Even his execution.
So it's less about,
she's trying to trace
sensationalizing the violence and more about understanding
how he went down this path of darkness. Yeah, like what created this monster?
But what factors might have played a role?
Right.
Yeah. I think that's what makes serial killers such a compelling listen.
Serial killers going on the list.
Good choice.
Okay, what else we got? Refinery29s.
All right, if you're in the mood for something that blends true crime with a bit of history and maybe a touch of the supernatural.
Okay.
There's Lore.
Lore. Okay, that sounds mysterious.
It does, doesn't it?
What's this one about?
So Lore is a podcast that digs into the darker side of history.
All right.
Folklore, mythology.
So it's like true crime.
We're talking stories of monsters, ghosts, witches, all those supernatural creatures that have...
Meets campfire stories.
Haunted humanity for centuries.
Kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is how Lore connects those ancient stories to our modern fears and anxieties.
It's like they're saying that the monsters may change.
Yeah.
But the fear...
But the fear remains the same.
Remains the same.
Right. And to give you a taste,
okay,
one episode focuses on the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack.
Wait, Spring-Heeled Jack, the one who terrorized Victorian England?
Yeah.
With the glowing eyes and the claws. And
glowing eyes, claws, leaping over buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lore goes deep into the historical accounts of his sightings, the various theories about
and it's amazing
who or what he might have been.
How those like legends endure,
Yeah, they do.
Even centuries later, they still capture our imagination.
They capture our imaginations. Yeah, and I think that's what...
Send a little shiver down your spine.
Lore taps into so well.
Yeah.
It's not just about the stories themselves.
Right.
But what they tell us about ourselves.
Lore going on the list.
And our relationship with the unknown.
What else we got?
Awesome.
What strikes me about all these podcasts is that they each offer a different, lens through which to view true crime.
Yep.
It's not just one big category. It's a whole spectrum of approaches and perspectives.
And that's why it's so important to explore these diverse voices.
Yeah.
They challenge our assumptions. Yeah. They show us the world in a new light.
They make it.
And they make the whole listening experience so much richer and more rewarding.
Yeah, much richer and more rewarding.
Yeah.
I'm definitely feeling challenged to rethink how I approach this genre.
Yeah.
Okay, what other treasures does Refinery29 have in store for us?
Well, for a podcast that specifically examines the issue of false confessions and wrongful convictions, there's wrongful conviction. False convictions.
Wrongful conviction. False confessions. Okay, that's a heavy one, but a very important one. What's the story behind this podcast?
So the host is Amanda Knox.
Okay.
And she brings
given her own
truly unique perspective to this issue.
Highly publicized experience with wrongful conviction.
She knows this subject on a deeply personal level.
She does.
Exactly. And that comes through in the podcast.
Okay.
She doesn't just report on these cases.
Right.
She understands the trauma and injustice firsthand.
Yeah.
So in each episode,
yeah,
she talks to exonerees,
It sounds like she's using her platform.
People who've been through that nightmare.
To advocate for others who've been through a similar ordeal.
She also interviews experts on interrogation techniques.
Right, to prevent these miscarriages of justice from happening again.
And advocates who are fighting for reform.
Absolutely.
In the criminal justice system.
Wrongful conviction. False confessions.
Yeah.
Going on the list.
Good choice.
What else we got?
All right. For those who are drawn to the mystery of cold cases, there's The Vanished.
The Vanished, just the name evokes a sense of intrigue and a little bit of sadness.
It does.
Yeah.
So this podcast focuses entirely on missing persons cases. Those cases where someone just
and those are
disappears without a trace.
Always so haunting because it's like a piece of their life.
And it tells the stories of both the missing individuals
and no one knows,
and the families who are left behind. Why?
Searching for answers.
Yeah, that's exactly what The Vanished captures so well.
Right.
The host, Marissa Jones, she interviews family members, investigators, experts, anyone who might help shed light on these cases.
It's a good reminder that behind every...
She pieces together the timeline, explores the theories,
I know,
but always with a focus on
case file, every news headline. There are
the human impact of these disappearances.
Those lives have been shattered.
Exactly.
The Vanished on the list.
Good choice.
What else is on this Refinery29 list? I'm hooked.
All right. If you're in the mood for something that blends true crime with a bit of history and maybe a touch of the spooky, there's American Hauntings.
American Haunting. Okay, now that sounds spooky. It does. What's this one about?
So this podcast dives into the history of ghosts and hauntings in America.
All right. So true crime meets.
So they explore the stories behind some of the most famous haunted locations across the country.
Paranormal. I like it.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
But what's interesting
is this different from
is they don't just present the spooky tales.
All the other...
They place them in their historical and social context.
Story podcasts out there.
They look at how these stories reflect the beliefs, fears.
It's like they're saying that ghosts.
And anxieties of different eras.
You know, it's amazing to me how these podcasts take, true crime, which is a genre that can, sometimes it feels, sensationalized.
Yeah. Or exploitative even.
Yeah. And turn it into something, so...
Right, they're using it as a springboard.
Much more.
To talk about
social issues, Yeah,
they're using it as a springboard to talk about...
To examine systemic problems.
Yeah.
To have those difficult conversations about race and justice.
And they're doing it in a way that's both...
And they're doing it informative.
In a way that's both informative and engaging.
Yeah. It's not just like a lecture. They're
drawing us in with stories, with personal experiences, with expert analysis.
And that's what makes it so powerful, right?
They're making us think.
Yeah.
But they're also making us feel.
Exactly. They're not just feeding our curiosity about crime. They're challenging us to...
So look at the world differently.
Yeah.
To empathize with others. To consider our own role in creating a more just society.
Okay, so one last podcast recommendation from Refinery29.
They're showing us that true crime, at its best, can be a tool for personal growth and social change.
What have they got for us?
All right, so if you're looking for a podcast that takes a historical approach to true crime, focusing on stories that have been marginalized or forgotten, you have to check out Criminal Broads.
Criminal Broads, I love that name.
It's a great name.
What's their angle?
So it's hosted by Tori Telfer, who's a writer and historian with a real passion for uncovering the untold stories.
All right, so shining a light on those hidden figures of criminal history.
Of women in crime.
Yeah.
And, I mean, both as victims and the perpetrator.
The women who've been overlooked or misrepresented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Tori Telfer brings this amazing blend of wit and knowledge to the table. She approaches these stories with humor.
A good mix.
But also with a deep understanding of the historical context.
Makes you want to learn more, but also keeps you entertained along the way.
Right. And one episode that really stayed with me was about Lyra McKee.
Who's Lyra McKee?
She was a young journalist, incredibly talented, who was tragically killed during a riot in Northern Ireland in 2019.
Wow. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah.
It's a devastating loss. And it's a reminder of, the risks that journalists face, especially when they're covering.
Yeah. And Criminal Bras did a beautiful job of honoring her life and her work,
right?
But also exploring the larger context of the conflict in Northern Ireland,
right?
And the role of journalism in those situations.
So it's like they're saying this isn't just a crime story.
Exactly.
This is about truth and justice and the courage it takes to tell those stories.
Yeah.
Criminal Broads, going on my list. This whole deep dive has been such a treat.
Yeah, it's been incredible, right?
We've gone from like social commentary to...
From social commentary to forensic science.
Forensic science to paranormal.
To the paranormal.
And now we're digging into the history of women in crime.
And what's amazing is how each of these podcasts,
right,
while all falling under the true crime umbrella, offer something completely different.
It really shows how much depth and diversity there is.
It shows how much depth and diversity there is within this genre.
Within this genre.
Especially within the Black podcasting community.
And it's really cool. And I'm realizing that by...
Yeah, and I think,
limiting ourselves?
By limiting ourselves to just the mainstream.
The mainstream.
The big names.
We're missing out on so much.
We're missing out on so much, these smaller, independent podcasts.
Yeah.
This is where the real innovation and critical thinking are happening.
Yeah, this is where it's at.
Yeah, this is where it's at.
This is where the good stuff is.
This is where the good stuff is.
This is so cool.
And that's why it's so important to keep exploring.
It is.
To keep seeking out those voices that are pushing the boundaries of what a podcast can be.
It really is. Yeah. And that's what we do here.
That's what we do.
On the deep dive.
On the deep dive.
We take these topics, we go deep.
We go deep.
We find these hidden gems.
We find the hidden gems.
And we share them with you.
Exactly.
And we want you to do the same.
Yes. Keep an open mind. Keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Never stop learning.
Never stop learning.
And you never know what you might find.
You never know what you might find.
So thank you for joining us on this journey through the world of Black true crime podcasts.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Another deep dive.
Into the fascinating world of knowledge and discovery.
See you then.